Welcome to CISSP training.
Now we're going to look at the actual drivers that somebody needs to understand when they're going to build a security program, or sometimes referred to as an enterprise security architecture.
Video by Xelmart.com.
We want to get to a holistic approach. We want a robust, holistic security program. And holistic security is kind of the new buzzword in the industry, which it's a good word, and we need to be holistic, which means that we have administrative controls, we have technical controls, we have physical controls, we're working at the different levels of operational, tactical, and strategic. So that's our goal. That's where we want to get. Not too many companies have it all down yet, mainly because it's an immature industry, but we're working towards it.
Video by Xelmart.com.
Now, when we're actually going to build a security program, that's not easy. This is one of the things actually in my consulting world that I'm doing the most, is actually helping companies build security programs. And the reason that it's difficult is because most people are focused on technology when they look at security. But a security program requires understanding the technology, the business processes, and the people that are involved. There's three distinct things that you have to get all working together. And this is why it makes it a little bit more complex.
By Xelmart.com.
So what do we need to understand? Well, we have to understand the legal requirements. There's federal and state laws, there's administrative laws. We have to understand legally what does the company have to do, protect what type of data, even international issues. We need to worry about their legal systems. Regulations, as I've said, is getting big. Do we have to protect medical information because we're under HIPAA? We have to protect financial information, even no matter where it goes, financial information through end to end when it's traveling and when it's on a computer. We also need to understand the business drivers, and this is one of the hardest things for security people, is to understand the business drivers, because a lot of security people, we came up from technology, and like I said, a company is not in business to be secure. That's not their whole thing, even though sometimes that's all security people think about. We have to help the business thrive. We can't hinder business in any way.
By Xelmart.com.
And there's always a balance between the functionality of business requirements and the security issues. It's a constant battle. So we need to understand the business, really, if we're going to develop a whole program that's going to secure the environment. And then we have to understand the level of the risk that the company is willing to undertake. And we're going to cover risk management and go into acceptable risk levels a little bit more, and how we set them and how we use metrics and such. But these are the first things that need to be understood. And a lot of companies don't start this way. They'll just start with the technical issues, then they'll have point solutions, but they won't start with a whole architect conceptually and drawing it out first. A lot of them just start installing different applications and hiring people and not really know what their end goal is.
Video by Xelmart.com.
So like I said, there's different types of laws we need to be aware of. Federal laws, state laws. Now, and they are changing because security is so important to companies, the government, but the nation overall. We have information warfare. I mean, I was in an information warfare group. Our countries are actually, or the countries are actually fighting each other through packets. At one time, war was just about guns and cannons and, arm-to-arm battle. But not many people are aware of all the information warfare, the
Video by
attacks that are
Xelmart.com.
taking place through technology. So because this is affecting our country overall, the government has come up with several different laws and different regulations to protect the national security, but also the economy. Now, of course, our country runs on the economy, and that's the reason that we had to put SOX in place, because companies weren't doing what they were supposed to with their, how much money they were making, and it scared off the investors, which affects the economy, which affects the whole United States or the whole country. So things are changing, and you need to be aware of the types of federal laws that an organization is under, the types of state laws. And some people are familiar with the California state law, which means that if you're doing business and you have one customer, even one customer in California, if personal data may have gotten compromised, you have to tell. You can't keep it to yourself. That's what the law is. And it started in California. They said if you even have one customer that's in California and their personal data may have been compromised, you have to tell them. Now, it's not just California. Every state is coming up with the same type of laws. And there's a potential federal law that's coming down. So privacy and protection of personal data is a really big force right now that we have to be aware of. And administrative law, which just means the regulations. The difference is laws will come down, and then they're going to be assigned to a agency like OCC or FDIC. When the law comes down, it's assigned to the regulatory agency, and then what they do is they develop regulations. So how do we know how we're staying in the bounds of the law? Well, the regulatory body, let's say OCC, will interpret the law and create these regulations. Then the corporations are to follow these regulations. And that's how we are abiding by the federal laws that are created. That's how all happens. And it's not just security. I mean, that happens in every aspect of business.
Video by Xelmart.com.
So within the law issue, when we're talking about law, there's a difference between due diligence and due care. And it's important that you not only know both, but how to conduct both. Due diligence means that you are finding out about your vulnerabilities, your threats, your risks. You're doing assessments. You are doing auditing. You're finding out what you're supposed to be afraid of. So due diligence means that you're looking, you're doing assessments, you're figuring out where your assets are, what type of risk you're under. Then due care is you're doing something about what you found out. So if you found out that you have a vulnerability because your SQL database is internet facing, then that's through due diligence because you assessed, you figured that out. Now due care is that you do something about it. You actually move it into the intranet or internal network or something. So the reason that these are important is if the company or you get pulled into court, what's going to happen is they're going to look at what kind of due diligence did you follow, what type of due care, means how responsible were you. And some examples of due diligence is understanding the dangers, carrying out assessments, and doing analysis on the assessment data, doing risk management. These are examples of due diligence. Because let's say I'm a president of a company or owner of a company, and somebody got into our database and got all these social security numbers and posted them on a website. Now, if I'm brought into court, which I probably will be, and it could be criminal or civil, they're going to ask me, what did you do to even look at and find this type of vulnerability? How could you leave your company so vulnerable? Now, if my response is, what do I know? I'm a business person. I'm just worried about making money, and I don't know anything about these ports or anything, then I'm probably going to be held liable. But if I prove that, look, I did assessments, we did risk analysis, because some things you just can't protect against. You don't have to provide 100% security, because that's actually not achievable. So in the court, if you were reasonable, if you could prove that you were reasonable, and you did follow due diligence, then there's a possibility you're not going to be fined or possibly go to jail. Now again, due care is doing the right thing, following up on the bad stuff that you uncovered when you did your assessment. So implementing the controls,
Video by Xelmart.com.
training your people, putting all of the different layers of controls that are in place. So that's due care. So that's how they work together. And due diligence and due care isn't just related to information security. That's in the legal world, and it's used for any type of legal issues. Now we're talking about legal issues, and actually we're going to have a whole section that's about law and regulations. But right now what we're looking at is the drivers that you have to understand if you're going to build a security program. So we're kind of overviewing some of the legal issues that we'll get in deeper later. So I talked about due diligence, which means we got to find out what we need to be afraid of and what we need to fix. Due care means we got to fix it. Now, the legal system works on something that's called the Prudent Person Rule. It used to be the Prudent Man Rule, but it's not politically correct. So now it's the Prudent Person Rule. And what this means is, let's say that I'm brought into court because I didn't carry out my corporation security properly. It negatively affected one of my partners and cost them money. Now, if I go into court, and they say, well, what did you do? If I can produce that I have a security policy, that I have a security program, that I've done my due diligence and due care, I'm acting responsible. Like I said, you can't have 100% security, so some things just happen in life that you do your best to protect yourself. But if I go in there and I don't produce that I have a policy or a security program or any of these things that I was supposed to do, even if I'm missing one of these things, then I would be irresponsible. I wouldn't be acting right, and that's how I would get a judgment against me. How they do that is they have this person who doesn't actually exist, this imaginary person called the Prudent Person Rule. So they think about, well, look at what I did and compare it to what a responsible person did and compare the two. So, and that's how it works a lot in civil cases. So whenever you hear the Prudent Person Rule, it's a legal concept which indicates how you're going to be judged on the level of effort that you gave to provide the necessary protection. So it's an important concept. It depends on where you are in security, especially if you're dealing with forensics or investigation. It definitely comes into play. So we have, this is a subjective thing, but law can be subjective. They're going to be interpreted, just like regulations are interpreted. And so we need to take the right steps to make sure that we are delivering the right amount of security.
Video by
Now,
Xelmart.com.
we talked about regulations, and a lot of people, when they hear regulations, they sigh, they hate them. But as a security person, you should love regulations because that's mainly what's keeping you in work. It's not mainly, but it's a big thing that keeps you in work. If you've been in security as long as I have, you've constantly had to fight
Video
with
by
management to
Xelmart.com.
educate them on putting security in place. And now, since the government is saying you have to put security in place, that fight is a lot easier, especially when you have regulations like Sarbanes-Oxley that could
Video
put
by
a CEO or a CFO into jail or charge them millions of dollars in fees. So there's a lot of regulations that keep coming down, but why are they coming down? Why do we have to have these regulations continue? Because companies and organizations are not doing what they're supposed to do. If you study these regulations, a lot of the stuff was already on the books. Like Sarbanes-Oxley, a lot of that
Video by
stuff was
Xelmart.com.
already on the books, it just was not enforced. So it's just like a parent enforcing, making companies do what they're supposed to do. So people who have to be compliant with it, not necessarily a lot of fun. But security people should really appreciate it because it makes their life a lot easier.
Video by Xelmart.com.
Again, why do we need regulations? Because of the corruption that has taken place before. Our United States is getting much more
Video
serious
by
about
Xelmart.com.
privacy of like health information or personal information. Europe has always been way ahead of the United States in protecting this type of information. And as I said before, once something affects the economy, that's really a big wake-up call. And Enron is a company that most people know of, but there's a lot of companies that were doing the same
Video
thing
by
as Enron was
Xelmart.com.
doing, which is they were moving their expenses over to profits. They were, basically cooking the books. And so now we have to have regulations that ensure that companies don't do that anymore. And it's actually raised the cost of doing business, but that's where we are today.
Video by Xelmart.com.